Well, 2024, it was a year. There were a lot of magnificent highs, a lot of very low lows. There was a little bit of this. There was a little bit of that. You know how it is. But, I had a pretty good year, so can't say it was all awful. Hello, everyone. Britton here, also known as Samoki Dude, and 2024 is coming to an end, or it has come to an end probably by the time that I put this up. I hope all of you had a really good year. I had a pretty good one, but today I am here to reminisce on it. I'm here to talk about the books and comics that I read during the year that I really liked and think are the best of the year. I had a pretty slow reading year. You know, I didn't get to everything that I wanted to get to, but I did get to most of it, and I want to talk about it with you guys today. So, yeah, I'm going to be talking about my top 11 books and comics that I read this year. I only have 4 comics, though, but it is top 11 books. And why do I say top 11? Well, I like to go one step beyond, as a famous YouTuber likes to say. So, yeah, I guess we shouldn't dilly-dally around it too much. Let's get into it. But before we do, a few honorable mentions. Yes, there were a good couple of books that I read this year that sadly did not make the cut, though that is not because they were any lesser than the books that I read this year. They were just, they just did not make the cut. They were just really unfortunate, very unlucky, and didn't quite reach the heights that these other books did that I read this year. So let me count off my honorable mentions real quick before we get into this video. So the honorable mentions include The Black Dahlia by James Ellroy, Thrice by Andrew D. Meredith, Bluebird Bluebird by Attica Locke, which actually has my favorite single line that I had this year. The Crossing by Cormac McCarthy, Sharp's Tiger by Bernard Cornwell, Knock 'em Stiff by Donald Ray Pollock, The Legend of Blackjack by A.R. Witham, The Hybrid Helix, which are 5 books, but I only read 2 of them this year, by JCM, Joe Byrne, and of course, My Darkest Prayer by S.A. Cosby. Yep, just give some applause. Give some applause. All of them are excellent books. You would be very remiss not to read any of those books, but these were the honorable mentions that I have for 2024. So let's get into the top 11 books that I read this year. I don't want to go too long on this because there's also comics that I have to cover as well. But these are the top 11 best books that I read this year. The best books that were engaging, emotional, intelligent, books that just really spoke to me as a reader, that really impacted me, surprised me, and even, I dare say, moved me. So let's get into it before too long, shall we? Let me have a drink real quick. Let's go. Number 3 is a bit of a cheat. It's a whole trilogy. It's not a single book, but it's my list. I can do whatever the hell I want. And that is the Edan trilogy by Philip Chase. I only have the first book. The other 2 books are over there, if you can see, right there. But I only have the first book because I didn't want to carry all 3 of them. Now, before you guys roll your eyes, I'm not just putting this on here because Philip Chase is someone who I am very, very fortunate to call a friend. But I'm also putting this on here because this is just a really damn good book. Damn good series, I should say. It's a very thoughtful, mature look into religion and spirituality and why people chase religion and spirituality so fervently. But it also really covers one of the biggest themes that anyone could touch on, which is how do we deal with this life? Because how do we cope with death? Which I think is the main theme of this series, if I really could say, is a main theme of this series. But Philip Chase writes this series with such precision, such cadence. There is not a word in this book that feels wasted, which I don't generally like to say because I think that line's kind of cheesy, but I really because again, it also just makes me feel really inadequate as a writer, because a lot of writing, I promise you guys, we're just figuring it out as it goes along. But Philip, though, this dude is an absolute master, and it is very impressive because this is his first like series, and he actually put it out when he was in his 50s, I should note. So I have to say, I'm very impressed. It's kind of like Knock 'em Stiff in that way, except it's a fantasy series, not what Knock 'em Stiff is. But anyway, but it's also a really thoughtful exploration into how people abuse religion and spirituality and use those things for their own gain. But Philip doesn't write with condemnation or, wow, look how stupid or evil all these people are. He writes with such thoughtfulness and heartfelt clarity, and it's also really, you could tell that this man really loves the fantasy genre, and there's so much love and heart and attention that is put into this series. And also the characters are really good too. I really enjoy Day Raven and the Funky Bunch, as I like to call them. But I won't say too much more because I had 3 very long, very in-depth conversations with Dr. Philip Chase talking about these very books. I will link them down below if you guys want to watch them. I really enjoy all of those conversations, and thank you, Philip, for writing these magnificent books. And this is number 11 on my list of best books that I read this year. Number 10 is another book from someone who I know, but I actually read this book before I actually got to know him, and that is All Things Left Wild by James Wade. And this is a book I would really describe, if I could do a Hollywood pitch, if you'll indulge me, as what if Cormac McCarthy wrote True Grit, and that's basically how I describe All Things Left Wild. It has that very daring-do, adventurous spirit of Charles Portis's True Grit, but it also has the relentlessly bleak and just punishing atmosphere that you will find in a Cormac McCarthy novel. And I might even dare say that James Wade hasn't quite shook off the influence of McCarthy, which I'll give him credit here. He has acknowledged, with this book anyway. Now, again, I won't say too much because I know the guy, and I'm not just putting this on here because I know the guy. I'm putting this on here because this is a really damn good book with, and I think that James Wade, even before I knew him, I realized that James Wade is a really good storyteller, a masterful storyteller, I might say, who creates a really great atmosphere and setting with the setting of Texas. And he also creates these really interesting, complex, and conflicted characters that you want to follow. Particularly Caleb Bentley was one who I particularly felt for. And I really like how he switches perspectives. Like Caleb's journey is in first person, while the other guy, Randall Dawson's perspective, is in limited third person. So I thought that was really fascinating how he did that. But this is a really good book. I highly recommend this for people who like Westerns and for McCarthy fans, though I think there would be some more hardcore McCarthy fans who might not be able to shake that this is very much inspired by McCarthy. But James Wade is a very good writer. I think he's very good at what he does, and I really like how he uses words, and I'm just kind of spinning my wheels at this point. But All Things Left Wild is my number 10. Really good book. Highly recommended. James Wade, very good writer. He's also a pretty cool guy, too. So, there you go. Number 9 is another Western. I read a good couple Westerns this year because I was writing one, but it's on a bit of an indefinite hiatus. But the book that I have for number 9 is Only Killers and Thieves by Paul Howarth. Paul Howarth, this is a writer I only recently learned about. This is an Australian Western. I would highly recommend this for fans of John Hillcoat's phenomenal and criminally underrated Western, The Proposition, which is an Aussie Western, much like this one is. I really love the atmosphere he plays with. I really love the prose in this, and he also creates some really interesting, conflicted characters that you want to follow and you want to see more about. It really follows two brothers as they go on this journey to avenge a past wrong. I won't go too much into it because, again, I did a review of it, and I forgot to mention I did one for All Things Left Wild as well. But this was a really good book, though. I really loved the precision of the prose. I really liked the thematic weight of this. I really liked how he explores genocide and just the really fucked up mindset of people who commit genocide and ethnic cleansing, particularly on the Aboriginal population in Australia. And Howarth does not pull back on the violence. The grit in this is very McCarthy-esque, but Howarth has certainly found his own voice, which is why I put this a little bit above All Things Left Wild, because I think Howarth has a much stronger voice that is very much his own. Because I felt that James, as great as All Things Left Wild was, really hasn't quite found his own voice yet. But this one definitely does. And the villain in this, Edmund Noon, is one of the scariest villains I've come across in recent literature, in my literary history, anyway. And will also be one that will remind many of you of a McCarthy-esque villain, but it's also a really damn good, very gritty Western that is about a much and not deservedly so forgotten part of world history, which is the history of Australia. And there are themes of colonialism in this as well. The only reason this was not a 5-star was because there's a mystery element that just kind of, it was totally obvious who killed, or, well, you know what? I won't go into that. It's a bit spoilery, so just ignore that. It was a bit obvious who did what. Well, I'll put it that way. But yeah, so Only Killers and Thieves. Fantastic, very underrated book that I think more people should go read. And if you're a fan of The Proposition, pick this up. This will satiate your thirst quite a bit. Unless it's Blood Meridian, which that will just blow your head back, as John Minton likes to say. All right, number 8. This is one that I have been building towards for a very long time. One that I've been wanting to read for a very long time. I actually bought this when it first came out in 2022, but it was the hardback version. I waited for the paperback, and I finally got the paperback, and I finally got to it this year. I finally hyped myself up enough to where I'm going to read this, damn it, if it's the last thing I do. And that book is Moon Witch Spider King by Marlon James. The sequel, the follow-up to what I consider to be one of the best fantasy novels of the 21st century, Black Leopard, Red Wolf. But yes, Moon Witch Spider King is my number 8 pick for best book that I've read this year. I really appreciate that Marlon James did not just do Black Leopard, Red Wolf 2. He changes the voice in this book, which is really impressive, because you would think after he writes Black Leopard, Red Wolf, he would just sit on his laurels and give us another Black Leopard, Red Wolf kind of narrative. But no, Marlon James is such a freaking amazing writer, he decides to change his style because he knows that if he did it in the same way of Black Leopard, Red Wolf, it just wouldn't feel right. What can I say? Moon Witch Spider King is yet another dense, elusive, strange, constantly you have to pin it down to try and figure out what the hell is going on. But it is a darkly, deeply compelling read. Much like Black Leopard, Red Wolf. And I think I still prefer Black Leopard, Red Wolf. It was really hard to divorce myself from Black Leopard, Red Wolf, even though I really, really, really tried, because Marlon James said that you can't really, I'm not going to tell you who to trust, and don't fully trust anyone. And that even means Sogalon. But what was really interesting about this book is seeing this from the female perspective, seeing this from Sogalon's perspective. And this isn't merely just a retelling of the adventure with the boy. We get a lot more context of to why the boy is very important. And we also really see Sogalon's backstory. We see how she views things. We see how she sees the world. And we also see, if you pay attention, you will also see the similarities that she has with Tracker, which I thought was the really interesting part for me. And that was really what I looked for as I was reading this. What's the similarities? What are the differences between how they depict the narratives of their respective stories? And Sokolon's journey is very much the story of a life. It's very much the story of a woman who has suffered, who has lost, but also has regained a lot of things as well. And really, all I got to say is the first chapter in this book alone really puts this book up as one of the best reads of the year. And while I don't hold it as much regard, or as while I don't appreciate it, while I don't love it as much as Black Leopard Red Wolf, this book really puts it up as really puts Marlon James as one of the great fantasy authors of our century. Do not miss Moonwitch Spider King. And hell, you can even read this first if you wanted. I mean, the language in this is very stripped back. It doesn't jump around quite as much as Black Leopard Red Wolf does, though, don't get me wrong, this is not merely a straightforward thing. I would recommend, as I do with Black Leopard Red Wolf, to read it out loud, or hell, even get the audiobook. I sadly did not, because I didn't get around to it, and I also let my excitement really override my better judgment there. But I think Moonwitch Spider King is a really great book, and I think it is one that really solidifies. If Black Leopard Red Wolf didn't do it, Moonwitch Spider King definitely did. Marlon James as one of the best fantasy writers working today. This dude knows what he's doing. And I won't say too much more, because I would like to do a proper review of this book at some point. But yes, and there's freaking dragons. There's freaking dragons in this book. Need I say more? No, I don't. Check this book out. Check Black Leopard Red Wolf out too. I prefer it, but this book, also check it out. Dark Star Trilogy is really, and it's still going. We still have one more book to go, and I have no idea what's going to happen next. And I cannot wait to see what he does next. So, yeah, Moonwitch Spider King. All right, I'll shut up about it. Number 7 of my list. Okay, number 7 of the list, I don't want to get lost here, is another book I read in January. I read All Things Left Wild in January. There were a couple of really good January books, actually, this year. But the book I'm talking about is My Dark Vanessa by Kate Elizabeth Russell. I picked this up because it's often compared to one of my favorite books, and that is Lolita by Vladimir Nabokov, which this book references quite a bit, and I would even say is in conversation with this book. I will note, I do agree with John Morrow. He said that this book is good, but it doesn't quite have the literary mastery of Nabokov, and I would agree. But I do feel like this book is a good companion piece to Lolita. Like, you could read this as sort of like if you did like a, kind of like how you would do a double feature. You could definitely do a double feature with Lolita in this book. While, again, I definitely prefer Lolita over this book. I think that this book is a really darkly compelling and often heart-wrenching look into sexual abuse and trauma, and how one really struggles to come to terms with trauma, and how really trauma can just wreck your life, and how really denial of trauma can really just makes it worse. While I'll admit I have never been in situations, I've never been hurt and taken advantage of, thankfully, in a way that our titular character in this book has. I have been hurt irrevocably in my life. I've definitely gone through some really horrible experiences in my life, and there have been moments I'm not really sure how to just cope with it. And there were moments in My Dark Vanessa that really spoke to me and really hit home for me and really made me not emotional, but really hit me in the heart, where I had to really put this book down and make a drink and just kind of had to think about it, because Kate Elizabeth Russell really knows how to put you in the feelings of her characters, really knows how to make you feel what they feel, and that's really a mastery on its own, even if she does not have the linguistic complexity of Vladimir Nabokov. But I think this book is really good, and also a really good read if you're familiar with Nabokov. There are references to Lolita. There are also references to Pale Fire. My Dark Vanessa, as a matter of fact. The title is a reference to Pale Fire. I haven't read Pale Fire yet, but I'll save that for the 2025. I'll save that for the 2025 books I'll be reading. But yeah. So My Dark Vanessa is a really good read, very heartbreaking read. I don't recommend this for people who are easily offended or people who are just going through a really hard time. All the trigger warnings, I'm trying to warn you. I want you to read this, but I am warning you in case you've been through trauma and don't want to go through that again. Just letting you know all the trigger warnings in this book. And but yeah, My Dark Vanessa was a great book, and it's really, really good. So yeah. Number six, the book I have is a much more fun one. It's one I had a lot more fun reading, and that is Robert McCammon's Speaks the Nightbird. I know this has been kind of making the rounds on BookTube, but damn it, it deserves it. It deserves it, damn it, because this is a fantastic book. And this is easily the most fun I've had reading a book this year. Because Robert McCammon, I have to just say it. Robert McCammon is a master storyteller. He is a master of suspense. He is a master of keeping you glued to the page. You want to see what happens next. It's not really that Robert McCammon did really anything new with this book, which is something I generally consider, but the discipline he has. Just the fact that he makes this considerably chunky book, a darkly compelling, I had to see what happens next, kept me on the edge of my seat, the mystery, the atmosphere, the evocative prose that he uses is just absolutely engaging. I can't really say enough. I mean, I threatened people to read this book. Talking Story, John can confirm it. I did threaten people to read this because it really is that good. But John knows it because he knows that Robert McCammon is a great author. But man, I am just kicking myself now because I didn't read McCammon until now. But at the same time, I am really glad that I did because Speaks the Nightbird is a phenomenal book. Easily one of the best that I've read this year. And again, it'll just keep you on your toes and it will keep you wanting to know what happened next. I mean, it's very rare for a book to just suck me in so thoroughly that I had to see what happens next. I mean, I didn't give this a 5. I might give it a 5, but we shall see. I really, really enjoyed Speaks the Nightbird, and hopefully this wasn't too gushy, but damn, really good book. Can't wait to read more of this series because Robert McCammon, man. He's so good. So, yeah, I'll just put this now. And Speaks the Nightbird is just phenomenal. I was not paid off to say that by John from Talking Story, though I do thank him for pointing me this way because, damn, it's a really good book. So, yeah, just going to take a drink now. All right, now we're getting in the top 5. We're getting into the real heavy hitters. Number 5 pick for this year is ginormous. It is one that I hyped myself to read for years now. And, what can I say? It's a book that is really the epitome of an epic. What can I say? And that is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell by Susanna Clarke. This book, I really don't know what else I can say about it. I did a really massive review of it on Goodreads that I think kind of summed up a lot of my views on it. But this book, I was quite excited to read it after reading Piranesi last year, which was on my top 10 list of 2023. But I don't know which one I like more, because Piranesi is because they're both very different, I should note. But just the ambition and the size and just the amount of things and themes and the lore that Susanna Clarke plays with, and the fact that she tells such a gigantic story and had me wanting more. What can I say? But really, the most impressive part of this book is how she plays with world building and how she plays with lore. I am a gigantic world building and lore nut. You guys probably know this. I just absolutely love lore, world building, all that stuff. Like, I love reading the Westerosi history stuff because that's just my bag. That's one of my favorite parts of fantasy. But the way that Susanna Clarke plays with lore, plays with world building, and not only really just shows it off to show like, wow, that she really put a lot of thought into this, but she asked, what if magic was real? What would it be like? And really the question it's kind of like if Primer, the time travel movie that Shane Carruth made in 2004, it's basically Primer with magic, if I could really describe it in so little words. I mean, it's really, if Piranesi did not put Susanna Clarke up as one of the great fantasy authors of the 21st century, then damn you, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell definitely does. There is not a moment in this that feels wasted. There are a couple moments that are little, you could have used some tightening here and there. I personally wasn't the biggest fan of the war parts, but even then, the war parts had their charms as well. This was a magnificent, sad, funny, really funny at times. If you're a fan of dry British humor, you will dig this. I have to agree with Neil Gaiman. It is easily the finest English novel that has been written of the fantastic in our century. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is a masterwork. I really do think it is up there as one of the best fantasy novels of our century. Susanna Clarke is truly magnificent, and this was her first novel. Oh, man. If only I could have written a novel like this. That's all I can say. But yes, number 5 is Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. It really does live up to the hype. Really great stuff. I would like to do a discussion video on this at some point. I just need to get some people together to talk about Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. Alicia definitely was going to make one, but I haven't really heard much from her. But I would love to do like a discussion type video on this, because that feels like what this book deserves, really. So, yeah, okay, I'll stop gushing about it. Now, I bet you're wondering, Britton, you've gushed so hard about Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell. What 4 books could possibly top them? Well, I'm going to get to them. Number 4, this was one that just kind of popped out of nowhere, really. I got harassed by, I'll be nice. And I was heavily recommended, we'll say, by Yolanda in particular at StoryTube to pick this book up, and that is Power of the Dog by Don Winslow. I mean, what can I say about this book? This book is a lot of things at once. It's very much kind of like a McCarthy-esque odyssey of violence. It's a very Elroyan kind of take on the war on drugs. I mean, hell, he's actually blurbed in this, so that's not surprising at all. Let me take another drink real quick. But despite the length of this book, and this book is pretty long. Like, it's pretty, or it's pretty. I mean, it's 540. It's pretty medium sized for me, but it's a pretty hefty book. But there is not a moment in The Power of the Dog that feels wasted. I really enjoy the discipline that Don Winslow shows. Probably the most thematically resonant book that I've read this year, and probably the most damning critique of the war on drugs since probably The Wire. This is a really good book for fans of The Wire. If you're a fan of David Simons's and Ed Burns' fantastic TV series, I would highly recommend Power of the Dog. Also, the prose in this is really good. Just staccato, bang, efficiency of a bullet. Why did I say bang? I have no freaking clue. I'm kind of running on wheels here at this moment. But Power of the Dog is the real deal. Now, do I think that he is up there with Lehane and Elroy? I don't know if I would go up there, but I do think that this book puts him up there with those two as one of crime fiction, one of noir's great practitioners. Don Winslow knows what the hell he's doing. He's a fantastic writer, and it is actually quite unfortunate now that he has retired, even though I don't buy that for a second. Yeah. Power of the Dog, fantastic book. Really, what can I say? It's fantastic. Number three, we are getting into the 5-star territory. This was my second 5-star book of the year. It actually was my second book of the year, but it got supplanted. But I'll get to that in a minute. And number 2 is another Western epic, and that is Lonesome Dove by Larry McMurtry. Larry McMurtry knows what lies in the heart of man. He understands the conflict, the competing emotions that are inside every human. I could definitely see why George R.R. Martin and Stephen King and Joe Abercrombie really like this book, because Larry McMurtry really has an eye for human drama, and he really knows how people think, and he really knows how people feel, and there's a lot of empathy and compassion in this book. This came out the same year as Cormac McCarthy's masterwork, Blood Meridian. But this book, guess which one won the Pulitzer Prize out of the two of these books? But truly, I really, what can I say? I did a conversation with Matt on Books, Tori, Joanna, Darko, and Joseph Reed's books, among others, talking about this very book, and it was a really great conversation. I'll link it down below. They're really great people, and they read along with me and had a lot of interesting insights that they shared with the book. But great characters, easily one of my favorite characters of the year in Augustus, Gus McCrae. That dude is just awesome, and most of this book is just him spouting off and going off on tangents and basically just irritating people, but it is magnificent. I mean, seriously, the Sign debacle, that was when I'm like, this book's a 5-star. The Sign bit is some of the funniest shit I have read all year. This book is hilarious. This book is really sad, and it's also just really compelling, even though a lot of it is just people going on a cattle drive and just kind of sitting around and not really doing much and just kind of talking. It really speaks to Larry McMurtry's power as a writer, that this book would be as good as it is. And really, what can I say? And it also ends on a really heartbreaking note. So, yeah, it's really good. There is trigger warnings in this. So again, if you're, shy about sexual assault and all of that, tread lightly. But if you're not, this book is phenomenal, and I am glad that I waited till now to read it, and I'm also kind of sad that I waited till now to read it, because it really is a fantastic book. But if you love characterization, probably some of the best characterization I've ever seen in any book, not just this one. Will it become an all-timer for me? Well, we'll see. But this book is definitely number 3 on the list of my best books of this year. And again, the Sign part, that was the 5-star moment for me right there. I'm like, yep, this book's getting a 5-star. No regrets whatsoever. I'm not sorry. I'm not sorry. So, yeah. Lonesome Dove is number 3. Books have just fallen over. Jesus Christ. Okay. All right, number 2. What could have supplanted Lonesome Dove? Because originally Lonesome Dove was number 2 on the list. But number 2 on the list. So what is number 2 on the list? Number 2 is The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. Yes, everything they said about this book is true. It is a very unflinching look into serving in the Vietnam War. It is a treatise on the power of storytelling and why we need story. And it is also a story of a man trying to come to terms with what happened while he served over there in Vietnam. All of those things are true. But really, why did this book become why did this jump up to number 2 for me when I read this in November as kind of a semi? I was reading some books, some war books or books about war for Veterans Day, because I wanted to celebrate the occasion. But this book really spoke to me, not because I have served in the military or have served in a war. As far as I would like, I would never want to serve in the military or in a war. I mean, that's for people who are far braver than I am. I'm just going to go out and say it. But the things they carried really spoke to me, because it reminded me of things that I carry in my own life. And Tim O'Brien, I don't compare him to this guy lightly, but he reminds me a lot of Nabokov and how he really makes you question your perception. He really makes you question makes you question your own perceptions about the war, and really how he inverts a lot of the common war cliches and how people view war. One of the moments that really spoke to me is when he describes going to war. And the story is him kind of overcoming his doubts and going to the war. And you would think, oh, good for Tim. Tim really put aside, bucked up, and did his duty. No, but instead, he derides himself as a coward. He says this is his greatest failure as a person, as a human being, was bucking up and going to the war, because, as he put it, he was too embarrassed to not go. But yeah, I mean, I would like to do a review of this at some point, because there's a lot to talk about. Maybe I'll do it as a discussion, because I don't know if I could do justice as a solid review. But The Things They Carried is the true deal. It is definitely a great American. I don't know if I would call this a novel, but it's definitely great American literature. That works. I think that'll suffice for some people. But this is my number 2 for the year of 2024. So yeah. Oh, sorry. What could number 1 be? Now, if you followed my channel, then you might know, because I have said it a couple times. Or if you've seen me on some live streams talking with other people, you might have heard me say this is my favorite book of the year. What could go over The Things They Carried, Lonesome Dove, Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, even Moonwitch Spider King, even the Edan trilogy? Well, I'll happily tell you, that is Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. I read this with my friend Darko, the homie Darko, at Kindles and Kicks. Go check out his channel. We had a good buddy read. He ended up making a video about this very book that kind of blew up. I'm not jealous about that at all, but we had a really great conversation about it on my channel as well. You can go check it out. I will link it down below. But what can I say about Kindred? I really love how Octavia Butler could stack so much depth and meaning in a very short time. There is nothing in this book that feels out of place. There's nothing in this book that feels superfluous. Everything that Butler writes, it has a singular purpose as a book. And it was really interesting reading this as a white guy talking with Darko, who is a gay black man. It was really interesting talking back and forth, because we had some different opinions about it. And even more creepy, there are locations in this book, because, well, I won't out where Darko lives, but I will say that Darko told me during our conversations about this very book that there were, like, she was depicting places that he had actually been, like, he had lived in, but he actually lived in these areas. And one of the things I also really like about this book is her exploration of how things haven't really changed as much as we like to think that they might change. But Kindred is a very powerful look into one of America's greatest sins, and also how we've never really come to terms with it. We've just kind of tried to look past, move forward. But Octavia Butler points out that we can't really move forward until we really come to terms with the past. And she really does this in an excellent way. She also inverts a lot of things, kind of conceptions about slavery and how people had to survive, Like, you can't really, like, you would love nothing more than to launch a slave revolt and kill all those evil masters who abuse and degrade you and violate you on every day. But you can't, because you do want to survive at the end of the day. The human instinct for survival is a deeply powerful thing, and Octavia Butler really makes you empathize with these characters, even the really bad ones who are like slave owners and are just objectively terrible people. But this book has stuck with me long after I read it, and really, there was no other book that took the spot of number 1. It couldn't have been any other book but Kindred by Octavia E. Butler. Oh, man. But yeah, what can I say? And thank you, Darko, of course, for coming on this journey with me. We're actually going to be doing another buddy read next year, which I'm really looking forward to. But yeah, those are my top 11 best books of the year. So yeah, let's move on to comics. Well, now I'm back here talking about my best comics of the year. I have my Diet Coke at the ready. I refilled it. I got my comics here. I should be good to go. There's only 4. I didn't really read a lot of comics this year, and I was just really busy, and I was also busy reading a lot of books. So yeah, that kind of took up a lot of time. But I read some comics. I enjoyed them, so I'm going to talk about them. I don't really have any honorable mentions. Headlopper maybe was fun. I enjoyed that. I also read Luther Strode this year. That was also pretty fun. So yeah. So that's really all I got for honorable mentions. So let's get into the comics and see where we end up. So for number 4, I have one from one of my favorite creative teams of comics, and that is Where the Body Was by Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I really don't know what to say about this comic that hasn't already been said about Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips. I would just be repeating myself at this point. This is kind of like if they made a Scorsese film, really. I mean, also with hints of the Coen brothers as well, because it has that kind of suburbia, kind of where things go wrong, that kind of Fargo-esque. It's like if Martin Scorsese made Fargo, I guess is how I would describe this comic. But, I mean, it's Brubaker and Phillips, so well-paced, really well-told story, with really magnificent art by Sean Phillips, and his son Jacob's coloring has grown on me, though it took a while, but it is growing on me. I really like the art in this. I mean, it's Sean Phillips and Ed Brubaker. You know, little Jeff Lemire there with that little superhero thing going here, but I really enjoy this comic. I really enjoy the characters in this. They do have a respectable amount of depth, and it's Brubaker and Phillips. They usually you can't really go wrong with any of their comics. I feel like I'd be repeating myself if I just kind of said it all again, but I don't know if I would say Where the Body Was is one of their best works, but it still is very good. So yeah, Where the Body Was is number 4. Next one I have is 100 Bullets by Brian Azzarello and Eduardo Rizzo. My friend Slay will definitely enjoy seeing this on the list. I really love the concept of this. It's basically this guy, Graves, that guy right there, comes to you and asks if there is, and basically gives you a choice. He gives you evidence, he gives you 100 bullets, and a gun that is untraceable. Basically shows someone who screwed somebody over in the past and gives that person a chance to get revenge. No strings attached, no nothing like that, except afterwards, if you do end up doing it, you can join this guy's organization. I really like the concept, though. I mean, I really like how he plays with the concept. Also has one of my favorite single issues of the year. The Christmas one is really good as well, but it's really the one about the waitress who ends up finding out a really dark secret about her daughter and her husband, and it's really messed up, but it's also really good. I really like the lore that's being depicted, that is being developed in the background as well, and the art by Eduardo Rizzo is really good. I mean, let me see. That is inappropriate. Here we go. Here's some art right here. I really love the colors. I really like the kind of exaggerated, I really like how he depicts people. He really differentiates them. Really trying to avoid the inappropriate parts here, because there's a couple. Let me tell you. Here's some more right here. And Brian Azzarello is a really good writer. I really love Luthor, Man of Steel, and Joker, particularly from him. His collaborations with Lieber Mayho is one of my favorite comic book artists. I really like his collaborations with them. But this is very good as well. I did like Moonshine, which is another one of him and Rizzo's collaborations. I like that, but this one I thought was really quite something. I don't know if I quite love it yet, but this is a really damn good start, and I really like the world building / lore developing, because as I mentioned with the books earlier, I really like that stuff. So yeah, 100 Bullets is my number 3. Number 2 is one that might surprise some of you or may not. I mentioned I like this guy's other series, but the one I got is The Goon by Eric Powell. I'll just come out and say it. This is the most fun I've had with a comic that I've had with a comic all year. This comic is just awesome. I really love the art, and while Eric Powell says a lot of the stuff in the earlier bits are really stupid, I really enjoyed it. This is just awesome. If you're a fan of stuff like Hellboy, this is basically like a goofier version of Hellboy. We even get a Hellboy Goon crossover in one of the episodes, with even art by the master himself, Mike Mignola. I really love the pulpy, offbeat, really strange, the really strange kind of art with this. And Eric Powell is a writer-artist who is really good at both. I don't know if the art is as good in this as it is in his other series, Hillbilly, which I really, really like. But I really do like his artwork. It's really quite something. I mean, look at that. It's really good. It's also freaking hilarious. This is easily the funniest comic I've read all year. I had so much fun with it. I just had a blast reading through this, and I really hope that the rest of the comic is as fun. The Goon definitely has a really devoted cult following, and I can see why. The comics in this are freaking hilarious. It's really dark at points, and it's also really sad at points, too, particularly the backstory of the titular Goon, who is this guy right here. And his best friend, Frank, this guy right here, he is freaking hilarious. I mean, geez, you should just... you should really read this. It's really a lot of fun, and it's very pulpy as well, much like Hellboy. It's just really, really a lot of fun, and I really enjoy The Goon. I think that it's really one of the best comics I've read this year. I can't gush about it enough. This was really a lot of fun. I really enjoyed seeing the Goon and Frank go on wacky adventures. A lot of them don't really make any sense. Also, the one with the one with Santa Claus is great. Just read this; you will have a blast going through this. But yeah, no, the Goon, really good. It's definitely my number 2. It hopped up there. It is a fantastic series, easily the most fun I've had reading a comic all year. So, what could number 1 be? I mean, you had so much fun with the Goon. What could number 1 be? And number 1 is very much likely is one that it was actually very easy for me to give this 5 stars. The only 5-star I gave to a comic this year, and that is Astro City by Kurt Busiek, Brent Anderson, and of course the great Alex Ross doing the covers. You can see his magnificent artwork right here. There have been many great superhero reconstruction comics that have come in the wake of Watchmen, such as All-Star Superman, DC The New Frontier, Kingdom Come, which is by Mark Waid and Alex Ross, and even Marvels, which is by Kurt Busiek himself and Mark Waid. But I think that Astro City has easily joined them as among the best, particularly the Confession arc and the Nearness of You, which is easily the best single issue of comics that I have read this year. Deeply moving, really great stuff. I really like how Kurt Busiek really shows why superheroes are awesome, but also he deconstructs them in a very heartfelt way. There's clearly a lot of love that Busiek has for superheroes, and he tells really damn good stories with superheroes in it. My favorite parts of this were easily the Confession, the Confessor arc is kind of like his Batman. I really loved seeing his perspective, and also the perspective of his sidekick, and also, of course, the Nearness of You. But there's also some really good arcs in here as well before it really gets to greatness, such as there's 2 superheroes who go on a date, and it's really a lot of fun. And just seeing them kind of interact with each other and learning their backstories, it's really a lot of fun. And also, there's one where basically the Fantastic Four, who basically are called the First Family, it's a Fantastic Four, where the little girl decides she just wants to have a day where she wants to be a regular little girl, and it's awesome. It's a lot of fun. I really enjoyed that arc a lot. I really enjoyed but it really, really gets great. Those stories are really good, but it really gets great with the Confessor and also the Nearness of You, which Kurt Busiek has lamented is probably his best that he did while doing Astro City, and he felt like all of it just really came out and came on the page. It is a beautiful commentary on superhero comics, and also a very heartfelt look at superheroes. And it's definitely one of the best superhero reconstruction comics. It really is quite something. I mean, the art is definitely, it definitely has that 90s, early 2000s look. I mean, I definitely think that Alex Ross is a better draughtsman, but Brent Anderson does some good work. I mean, he really makes the characters feel distinct. But really it's the writing of Busiek that I think really makes this comic pop, at least in my opinion. I really enjoy how he plays with superhero conventions. And he does deconstruct them, but he also reconstructs them as well. It really shows why superheroes matter, why we love them so much, and why ultimately they matter. This definitely joins as among the best superhero reconstruction comics of all time, and the easiest 5-star I have given in a while. Truly, truly magnificent stuff. So yeah, Astro City is my #1 comic of the year. Really fantastic stuff. Well, that is it as terms of all the comics, books, and stuff that I read this year. I hope you guys enjoyed watching and reviewing with me this year and seeing all the discussions and podcasts and stuff that I'm doing. And I have a lot of really fun plans that I'm hoping for 2025, but you will see that soon. Hopefully you guys will enjoy what I've come up with here, and hopefully you guys will stay with me until 2025. I got a new goal, got new goals, got new things I want to do, so yeah, I'm looking forward to that. I hope you guys read a lot of 5-star reads during 2024. So yeah, this is really my last video about 2024. I hope you guys enjoyed it. So yeah, let's keep moving on. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff. As my buddy John Minton likes to say, it feels good when you press that subscribe button. Also find me on Twitter. You can find me on Goodreads and Letterboxd, where I write reviews. They're probably more coherent than the one you just heard right now. You can also find me on Instagram and Blue Sky, even though I don't really use Blue Sky all that much. Yeah, I mean, not really much else to say. Hope you guys had a great 2024, and I hope you guys have a really great 2025 as well. I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and until next time, see you guys in 2025.